everybody. Thanks for being here. It's really cool to be back. I haven't been back here in like 8 years. So much new stuff, including this space, which is very cool. I thought about how to best approach this conversation, and I started slide deck presentation kind of deal, but then it just felt kind of a little stilted to me, and I honestly feel like the best advice that I've gotten with regard to publishing and lit mags and journals and all that stuff has been conversational. So yeah, I hope you'll forgive my informality, and I would love for this to be more conversational, and just more specific. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to give you any advice that I have. From the top, so most of the work that actually I'm curious, so y'all, I'm assuming many of you are writers, aspiring writers, publish some stuff. Do we have people like poetry people raise hands? Cool, love that. Fiction people? All right, and non-fic? Okay, cool, a nice mix of stuff. That gives me an idea of like what I might want to target for y'all. So I think the first thing with publishing, with lit mags and journals and stuff, it feels like playing the lottery a lot of the time. Even the best work that you send out, you still might get a no. You're probably going to get tons of no's. So it's just a matter of figuring out what your goals are and then going from there. I think some people prefer an approach to submission that's just like send everything everywhere and see what the hell sticks. I generally think it's better to just be very specific about where to send your stuff. You'll save yourself the headache of putting together the submission, and the more tailored your approach is, the more likely it is to be successful. As far as figuring out where to try to place your stuff, I always recommend folks to, if you have particular writers who you admire, check out their books, the acknowledgement sections, check out where they've published, and then look into those magazines and journals. There's always the big ones that people know, the New Yorker, the Paris Review, yada, yada, yada. But a lot of folks really cut their teeth on like smaller magazines that are still like very rigorous in their editorial standards. I think that's always a great place to start. It's like you kind of want to think about who your peers are, or who you would like your peers to be, and then go from there. So once you have an idea of like, okay, I kind of want to place these things in these places, I think that one of the most important things to do is to really think about like the aesthetic of where you're submitting. Let's say you have a bunch of narrative poems that are or things that are very voice-driven. You want to seek out places that are actually publishing stuff like that. Like I've definitely wasted time sending things to like, again, the willy-nilly approach, just like seeing what sticks, and then looking more closely at their aesthetic. That's just like not what they're featuring. So you want to definitely read through a few of the issues. Like that will tell you a lot. And from there also like, thinking through, like with fiction, for example, I have friends who work as editors for poetry or fiction and for nonfiction. And one of the things with submissions that they're always thinking about is what have we published recently and what's in our pipeline? Because that will inform the decision making as well. So you can be a little strategic with that. And sometimes just the cookie crumbles in ways that like you can't know everything that's coming. A good friend of mine, Lily, she works mostly as an essayist. She has a really cool essay out that's mostly about diving. And she had been in talks with the New Yorker about publishing it with them. And they were like, oh, we love this essay, but we have one essay about diving that was out a few months ago, and we have another one coming soon that was about like a major slave ship dive outside of Brazil. So they're not diving quarterly, so eventually you gotta change it up. So that happens, but I think when you look closely at the subject matter, that can help to inform some of the decision making that you're going for. Where to go from there? I'm wondering if any of you have like any preliminary questions. We have a very cool traveling mic that is apparently throwable, which I've never seen before. It's like dodgeball. Any particular questions?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, what's up?
I want to make sure like you get my question Because sometimes if we don't phrase our questions right, and somebody answers a question that you didn't have.
Totally.
Okay, so concentrate. Here we go.
I'm here.
All right. So with the invention of AI, ChatGPT, all the rest of that, I know many writers will write their essay, for example, and then they'll tell ChatGPT, improve the prose or humor of this, and it'll tweak it. But then I discovered that there's an AI detector that publishers are using.
Yeah.
So what's the percentage, is the question, where a publisher would run your essay, for example, through an AI detector, and maybe you had 5%, 10, 20, where they would be like, you know what, I'm kicking this back. You use too much AI.
Yeah. And you're asking specifically for like essays.
I'm just using it, I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Let's just stick with essay.
Sure. No, it's a good question. And I'm sure different editors will have slightly different answers. Because I've seen those detectors can have pretty high numbers for work that's totally original. I think, it could estimate up to 30% of this is potentially AI written, even if it wasn't at all. I think from what I've heard, higher than 50 is where it starts to get fishy. Yeah. But yeah, work that's completely original can, and especially as we continue to feed text into our AI overlords, the work is becoming more and more similar to ours. So that will continue to be a problem, unfortunately.
I like your term, your AI overlord.
Yeah, we just keep doing it. Yeah, what's up?
So my question is, how as a writer can you gauge your own work and kind of tell when it's submission ready or if it feels ready to submit somewhere? Because I know as a writer you can feel kind of like blind when reading your own work.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that was one of the main things that I wanted to talk about, because let me tell you, even as like a, I guess, mid-career writer at this point, it can still be difficult. So I think the main advice is you just find readers who you trust. Even if you have like one or two people who you know are not going to bullshit you, pardon my French, if you have one or two people who are going to tell you like, I know that this is your best version of this, or like, I know that you can do better, that's the best thing you can do. Because yeah, like when you've stared at something for so long, it's hard to know sometimes like whether it's ready, whether it's like fully cooked. And sometimes, and time is one of the best editors too. I've recently been revisiting some work. I did my MFA in 2017, took an extra semester, finished up in 2020. So I had some work from that time that I've been revisiting recently, and that's been cool. Taking a nice gap in between when I wrote it and what's going on now. And so revisiting things with fresh eyes is really helpful if you start to feel stuck. So I would say, yeah, editors, time is a great editor, and like one or two people who you know are going to be honest with you would be my advice. And those could be people who are writing in your same genre. They could be people from a workshop, or they could just be friends who you consider to be great writers, or excuse me, readers. Yeah, what's up, Yada?
So once you've submitted a poem to a journal and it was rejected, when do you give up? How many journals do you submit to until you're like, maybe this poem is not fully done after all, and it needs to be revised? And also, do you revise the poem and resubmit it, or do you rework? What would you do with a poem that's been rejected so many times?
Yeah. Also, a great question. I would say, for me personally, if I'm sending something out, well, first of all, yeah, I would try to make sure that I run it by the readers that I trust. It's given it enough time, or I feel like I've given it enough time. Send it around to 3 or 4 places that feel like a good fit. Anywhere between like 3 and 6, let's say. And you're getting straight rejections. That might indicate to me that it needs more time. But it's also it's not, sometimes that's just how it shakes out. Like, let's say you have, a really fantastic horse poem or something, but you sent it to 5 journals that all have a different horse poem coming in that issue. Like, sometimes you just, how could you have known that? So that's why I think that getting 7 rejections in a row doesn't mean that the piece isn't good or ready or publishable. Sometimes that's the tricky part of it, is that it's the data is the same data can mean different things. So you have to have a little bit of trust in your own sense of your work and in those outside voices who are going to tell you like, hey, maybe this could look another way. Maybe there is more to do here. Actually, no, you just didn't luck out with that horse poem. Mm. Yeah, what's up?
Got it.
Ooh, nice. I'm obsessed with this mic. I think it's great.
What advice do you have for writing bylines, especially if we've never published before and don't have like things to put as like has been published here?
Yeah, bios. Yeah, I think that bios it's such a funny and formal thing sometimes. I would say if you haven't published too much, you could say things that you are interested in. I would say, yeah, like, go with personality, like, right? Include things that are like I have friends who are very widely published who just on principle refuse to do the like formal bio thing. Like they're everywhere and they're just like, that's just not really my style. It'll be like, they'll just say that they, are really into The Sopranos right now or something. Like I wouldn't stress it too terribly ultimately because the main thing with like bylines and bios, let's say that you get a piece in a magazine, you want to direct, if you have a website, you maybe want to include that so that people know where to find you. Any information about like the kind of work that you do outside of writing, where you're from, all of that is equally helpful, if not more so, than the places that you've published. That can be good to include if you have them, but it's not like the only thing. So, yeah, I think just have fun with it. Yeah. Hello.
I was wondering, do you have like any daily or maybe like weekly writing exercises that you do where the end goal isn't like putting out a product but just creating the product itself?
I have. I don't right now. I feel very pretty unstructured with my writing habits right now, which part of that has been just my book's out in July, so I've really been in like editing mode and gearing up for the tour so I can come do stuff like this. So I'm not really in a big writing mode right now. I'm doing a lot of reading, and like I said, I've been just like really in the weeds of editing, but the edits are done, I can't change it, the book will be out soon. But yeah, traditionally, I'm not a big morning writer. I know some people are very dedicated to like getting their morning pages in before work or school or whatever. I'm just not a morning person. I guest lectured earlier in Professor Hart's poetry class, and I'm not up and at him at 9:30 ever these days, so that was new for me. But I think that like having a routine of some kind is helpful. Yeah, I think when I'm really in a good swing, I'm very productive at like between the hours of like 5:30 and like 7:30. Like I love to write before dinner or like right before going out somewhere. Like that's having a bit of pressure between like, okay, I have this much time before I'm about to go somewhere. That's always a really like fertile time for me writing wise. So it's just figuring out like what those hours are in the day that you feel motivated to do it. Yeah, what's up?
What do you think about the editing services journals offer? Are these? Do you recommend any of these?
Yeah, more and more places have been doing that. You're talking the places that'll be like, oh, you can send us so and so, and it's a fee, and then they'll give you feedback.
Yes.
I think certainly if you respect their overall aesthetic and you like the work that they're putting out, it's not a bad deal. It's not a bad idea, especially if you're not in a more structured workshop environment. If you're still looking for like great readers of your work, I think it's a good idea. especially if it's not like terribly expensive. And that's also a way of fostering a relationship with editors. That's showing that you are, they'll remember that. It's not going to guarantee publication, but overall, like, I think it's better to have a practice of not only focusing on publication in your dealings with editors and stuff. They're just people too. We all just love great writing, and I think that kind of like the soft skills of just networking and just like being a friend and being in people's ears like will take you really far in publishing too. And the more that you are in conversation with editors and stuff, the more that they'll start to reach out to you for stuff. And it's not, that's really been one thing for me that's been great, is that over time, I still submit every now and then, but I have like gradually built relationships with editors where sometimes they'll reach out to me for certain things, and that comes from building those relationships. So it sort of shifts the power a little bit. Mm-hmm.
I'll go.
Yeah, what's up?
You want to go first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll keep the mic here. I guess I'm wondering, kind of like in, the vein of where you've been published in your bio, in like this current era where like influencers get book deals and everybody has a Substack.
Yes.
How important are you finding being published, maybe like seeking representation or seeking to get like a larger narrative published?
Mm-hmm.
Is it important at all? Is it more who you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're wondering.
It's a good question. I think that, yeah, I mean, I love it. Substack has really democratized the process. There's so many great writers who are just like killing it on Substack and getting book deals that way. A friend of mine, the writer Rain Fisher Kwan, like she's fab. She has her Substack is it's like over 150,000 readers or something, and that got her novel deal. So yeah, it's like you could go that route, or, but it helps to publish. I think my literary agent reached out to me from one of my earlier big publications, which was in the Atlantic in like 2019, I think. So when you have those big placements, it does, people will reach out that way. So I think, but it doesn't have to be a big place like that. It could also be a smaller outlet, because people are reading everywhere. People are seeking great writing everywhere. So I would say a mix of both is great. Like, I'm not on Substack at all. I feel like I should be. Yeah.
Could you repeat the name of the person you just said, Fisher?
Rain Fisher Kwan.
Rain Fisher.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me write that down.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's brilliant. Highly recommend.
I actually have a Substack. Probably like a lot of people in here have a Substack. Maybe even a website. It's a great way to start. So the question is, early on, at what point, because they say they aren't really paying writers anymore, where you say, I just love writing and I'm willing to do it and push through and wait for a paycheck, because that would be the motivational, inspirational part of this talk, where you would encourage the audience and go, just write, even if you don't get paid.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna repeat that verbatim. No, it's tough. It's tough. With publishing, I mean, a lot of the outlets, like some of them, they have a shoestring budget. A lot of really great magazines. It will shock you. Like The Nation, I published with them, and I admire The Nation. I think they're really great essays I've read in there, like really across the board, really a brilliant literary coverage, and they did not pay very well for a poem that I had in there. And they have a huge readership. So it'll surprise you how little money there is, especially for poetry. I mean, there's no money in poetry, there never has been. Fiction, there's like a little more, and nonfiction, I feel like that's really, you have more luck there, but it's tough. So I can't sit here and say like, I think that if you love it, you will do it, and you'll find ways to make it work with whatever you have going on. But it's tough for sure. Yeah. Yeah, what's up? Ooh.
Thank you. I have two questions. I'll just ask them back to back.
Okay.
One, where was the first place you were published?
Ah.
Like, what was the story of that? And then second one, you talked a little bit about your writing practice and when you write, but I'm wondering when life gets really, really busy and you have, like, at least in the beginning, you have to have a day job.
Yeah.
How do you hold yourself accountable to writing? Is that a struggle? Do you have to be like, I just have to sit down and do it?
Mm-hmm.
And do you have people who like check in on you? Like, how can we, wanting to write, like, keep ourselves on track? Like, oh, now I have to go and I have to like publish or like make moves towards publishing at least a certain number of times a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, first question. First place that I published, I think it's a small queer literary magazine based out of DC called Argot Magazine. I think so. Maybe circa like 2016 or something. They had like a Pride Month feature. And so I submitted to that, and I think that was the first time that I was published. And it was so cool. It was like it was my first time seeing my work in print. I feel like maybe, if not that was maybe the first thing that wasn't like a college publication. Like I published stuff at William and Mary too. Yeah, I think that was what that was. And then your other question is like keeping writing with the day job of it all, just, perennial concern. Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York since graduating, and I've really run the gamut of like writing related and jobs. I've been a copywriter. I've worked in like events at a media company. What else have I? Yeah, like arts and fashion and yada yada yada. And I got to a place. Let's just say like I was not a great employee in like most of those places, because my concern was always like, this is just a day job. Like this is paying my bills so that I can write, often like on the clock. So I'm in a place now where my work is all freelance and I'm able to be my own boss, which it works for me, and probably it's just better for everybody that I not be in a 9-to-5 capacity. But you figure out the thing that works best for you. I have lots of friends who, because with freelancing comes, it's certainly more unstable. I have friends who have their nice little job that keeps them afloat, and then they get the writing in after work, and you just have to decide, like, your time is a lot more limited when you work in that way, and so that pressurizes it in a way. Sometimes I think about, there were times where I was really productive in my current work arrangement, or have been really productive, and also unproductive. And same in like past stricter, more traditional work environments. Like there's times where I'm really doing it. Like I think I wrote most of my first chapbook in a 9-to-5 kind of setting. But then there's times where you're also unproductive. So I think that the ideal conditions for making can arise in all situations. Yeah. Yeah, what's up?
So I have 2 questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a little advice
Mm.
on cover letters when you send to journals? What do editors usually like to read in a cover letter? If you want to make it like a little bit more warmer than just, hey, consider these 3 poems.
Mm-hmm.
And also for these big magazines like poetry magazines,
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic, for them, does your publication history matter when they read your work and they decide whether they would publish it or not? So when you send out publications to them, is there a point where you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not ready yet, I haven't been published in other places enough to have a good bio for them?
Mm-hmm.
Do they really care about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are both good questions. With the cover letter, I think the main thing, I tend to feel like just keep it pretty simple. Definitely friendly. If you want to give some context on the submission, like this comes from this larger work, these deal with these subjects, stuff like that can be cool. Just don't mess it up. If you're submitting to the Cincinnati Review and you put the New Ohio Review or something, they're not gonna read it. Like they probably will read it, but you already like sabotaged yourself. It's the same with like applying for jobs. Like places are looking to disqualify you from the top. You have to kind of assume that, right? So don't sabotage yourself by accidentally like leaving the wrong journal name in there, which I have done before, and then later realized, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then the second question, oh yeah. See, I think that's kind of up to you. I know there's arguments to go to do that, to sort of think of it as, getting your sea legs with smaller publications and then working up to the bigger places. But if you feel really strongly about something, I think that it doesn't hurt to throw it out to a bigger pub and just see what happens. The first time that I was published in Poetry Magazine, I was in my first year of my MFA, which is like 2018. And at that point, I hadn't been writing seriously for even that long. It just, that piece happened to really, it just worked out that way. So, and I had maybe like 5 or 6 pubs or something. So that happens all the time. And all of the big publications, and poetry, they regularly will, in the contributor bios at the end, they'll asterisk like, this is so-and-so's first publication. So that can happen too. You just never know what's gonna resonate where, so it doesn't hurt to try. Mm-hmm.
I'll ask a question, what the heck? Let's keep it going.
Yeah, I love it.
So this is a very cool invention, by the way.
It's great.
They say people aren't readers anymore. And many people are turning their work into podcasts and videos. And then I've also heard that, well, readers will read. They're not, if they love reading, they're not going to go over to the video. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on this trend?
I mean, yeah, I tend to agree readers are readers, and also that the experience of reading is unique. It's not the same thing to hear a podcast or even an audiobook. The act of reading and processing words on the page, like I don't think that's replicable. And so, we have our reading loyalists. But I think that I appreciate, there's a lot of great literary podcasts that I personally enjoy. Some friends of mine do, I think it's called Limousine Readings is the podcast. They just did a big deep dive series on Anna Karenina last summer. They just read it all summer and talked about it and had many funny conversations. So I think that it can be a good complement to a rich literary culture. It shouldn't be hopefully not the only thing, hopefully people are actually still, reading the books, but.
Are you tempted to turn your writing into audio or video?
I mean, I will be recording an audiobook for the book, and it's something that I do think about, especially with the advent of book talk and all of the TikTok accounts that are dedicated to reviews and talking about, roundups of books, and here's what I'm reading, and here's what you should read, and blah, blah, blah. That's also been great for literary culture. So I think that I think as a writer, it's good to think about how you might transfer what you do into a format that is consumable via video. But I don't think you should force it. I think that the right mode for it should come naturally to you. I think some people are really great about just hopping on video and being I'm going to talk about this. But if that's not your wheelhouse, then there's other ways to do it, I feel like. Brian, where is the dodgeball?
I was hoping you could talk a little bit about, I guess, just why this submitting to journals and literary magazines is important to a young writer's career. If their real goal is to publish novels or books of poetry, why go through this kind of long stage?
Yeah, why do we even care? And I think the answer is, or I can, speaking from the I, submitting to literary magazines and journals and all that gave me the opportunity to, I guess, subject my work to scrutiny via different bodies of people, which I think is really helpful. If one person likes your work, that's great. But if 6 different people at different outlets all decide that your work is publishable, then you're on to something, essentially. I think it's good for a writer's self-esteem. I think it's good for, you can also get feedback, like different sorts of feedback from all the different places. So you're just, it's helping your overall body of work to do it. I think that writing is such most of it is solo. It's a lot of, a time at a desk. So I think the more that you can make it a social activity, the more that your work benefits overall. That's why readings are really important too. Readings have been a really huge part of my writing life. So I recommend I feel like reading for fiction and for nonfiction can be, I always feel like y'all have a slightly tougher job with reading. Like poets, it's just like, hey, we have these short pieces and we can do it. With fiction, you kind of got to be like, all right, so in this scene, got to do the setup. But I think it's worth it, like to get live feedback, and it's such a great exercise. And you learn a lot about a piece by hearing it out loud, regardless of genre. Y'all just got another one. I love it.
How do you start advertising? Asking the world to see
Advertising.
your work, your, like as an emerging poet.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I guess I've always shared my work via my socials and stuff. I think that's part of the benefit of publishing with literary magazines and journals is like that does the advertising in and of itself. A lot of these places have dedicated readerships, so it's bringing your work to people who might not otherwise see it. And I have lots of friends who have great careers in publishing who don't do the socials and all that. It's not entirely necessary. But I think like whatever is your outlet, like just use that as much as possible. For me, that's been Twitter and Instagram historically. Again, Substack is really great, or just any sort of like email newsletter. You can plug that wherever you can, and then just that helps to keep people abreast of like what you have going on, what events you have. Like you want to foster a relationship with readers that keeps them up to date on what you have going on.
If you're not very deep in the world of literary journals and magazines, where do you start looking to figure out where's right for you to publish?
There are a lot of roundups. There's a couple different, I'm struggling to remember the name of this one place that will do it like a regular, like seasonal roundup of, because they have specific submission timeline windows. So that's also something to keep in mind, is when those windows are. There's been many times where I've accidentally forgotten to write that down, and then I'll remember, oh yeah, I really want to get something to, Granta or whatever, and then their window was like 2 weeks in May, and it's now September, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, keeping track of that will help you a lot. And I would you could keep that in a spreadsheet, and spreadsheets will save your life with this kind of stuff, like with the deadlines and also where you have work out submitted to, in case you have like simultaneous submissions and then so-and-so takes it and you have to withdraw it from somebody else. That's important to keep track of too. The more organization you have, the better you can game the system overall.
I'm always up for a question. You guys should be interviewers, not writers. right, so Maya Angelou, everybody knows that name.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think she got famous because she was a great writer, or it was because her network?
Probably, I mean, certainly she was a brilliant writer, and she did also have a really great network. What makes you ask this? I'm curious.
Because when I think of poetry, her name comes to mind.
Yeah.
And no one else.
Yeah, I mean, she was extremely public facing. Like, I think I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about Toni Morrison, who was also like so public facing. Like, she was really pumping it in the interview circuit, always had something really brilliant to say. And so if you're good at that kind of thing, that really can help your writing career. And I think that definitely helped Maya Angelou a lot with, she was just so ready to give a talk, give a reading, give an opinion. Writers are generally, I would say, a more introverted circuit of people. So it's not everybody's thing, but if you can do that, it definitely doesn't hurt. And yeah, the more that people see you out there, the more that they remember you for other opportunities, which is sort of annoying. Like, the culture of, I think the idea of relevance is often very harmful to art making, because it shouldn't be like the forefront thing that we talk about, but that is kind of like why publishing often can, each door can open up the next door and the next one and introduce you to the next editor and all that. I've definitely seen, like, over time, the more that I've published, the more that I've given talks, the more that people think of me for opportunities. So yeah, like, as people respect your writing, the network grows, and then it becomes symbiotic rather than one or the other, I think. Okay. Hell yeah.
So my question is, in hindsight, how old were you before you feel like you were ready for serious writing, or work that you can still, like, today stand by?
Work that I can still today stand by. I was thinking about, I didn't really start writing seriously until Willing to Marry. This was like, what I'm doing now was not the plan coming into college. But yeah, I took some creative writing classes here and had a blast, and then I won one of the big literary prizes, and then just started to take it more seriously. So I feel like I'm curious, I want to look back at what some of my undergrad poems were and whether I would like them now. I feel like there's probably some stuff in there that I'd be like, all right, you were really cooking, but I'd probably do it differently now. I think it's important as writers to, revisiting is important so that you can see, not only your growth, but also see that you were doing stuff that was good before, and to not lose that essence. I think that there is a tendency to be really kind of brutal with your past self and be like, what was this idiot talking about? But that's not, that's not always the case. So if I had to guess, I definitely have some stuff from my MFA that I feel was written the way that it needed to be in the very first go around. And that's the thing with writing, is sometimes you write something in one draft and it's perfect. I mean, not sometimes. I would say that that's rarer than not, but it does happen. Sometimes you write something and then you need to sit with it for 7 years or whatever, and then it'll come together eventually. So discernment will teach you with time, which it is. I hope that answers your question.
Hello. I'm curious, I'm just going to ask about your MFA.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you feel like that was the right decision? When did you decide to do it? So straight after undergrad, or did you wait a little bit? And what played into that decision? A lot of times we talk about MFA programs being funded, or the kind of cost versus and the investment versus the return. So can you talk about that decision a little bit?
Yeah, totally. I was straight out of undergrad, and I was at NYU for my MFA, which was my top choice just based on the poets who were there. And basically, I told myself, if I get a full funding package, and if they'll pay me to go, then I'll go. that was, I was not going to go into debt for it, especially for poetry. In general, it's a hard thing to go into debt for in MFA. There's so few guarantees. So for me, I was like, I don't know about that. But I can't say that it's not worth it, because whether it's worth it, that's so subjective to you and what your goals are and whether you can pay it off quickly. There's so many different circumstances. But those were the main things for me. Like, this is my top choice program. I love who's doing it or who's teaching there, and I wanted to move to New York anyway, so enough things aligned that it made the most sense. It was either, if that didn't work out, I was gonna go like the law school route, which I'm kind of glad I didn't do. I think I would not have been a good lawyer.
No, not for me. That was a good drop. That was a good drop. Just to brace myself. Now that you're out of school, what are ways that you still kind of practice to improve your writing? Is there like readings or techniques that you're striving towards?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do to improve your writing is to read really excellent stuff as often as you can, and read widely. Don't just read in your genre. I have so many friends who, poets who I don't think read enough fiction. I have fiction friends who I'm like, y'all need to be reading more poetry. Like, in general, just read widely, and it will help immensely. And I think just participating in the literary culture wherever you are. Like I said, I'm in New York, so there's too many readings. It's an abundance of. It's like what's the term that I'm thinking of? Something of riches. An embarrassment, yeah. An embarrassment of riches. There's too much all the time. There's always a book launch. There's always this and that, and so I go to as many of those as I can. And I'm constantly getting ideas or just hearing a line at a reading that like triggers something, and then all of a sudden I'm writing all over again. So I think, yeah, just being a good reader and a good participant in your local scene will keep you writing. And also just not even just literary stuff, like go see tons of films, go to like engage your local visual art scene. Like, all of that I find has kept me writing and writing.
Can't believe I caught that. Suppose someone has written a short story or some poetry and they'd like to get it published, an unestablished writer, not established. As tempting as it is to send it to the New Yorker, what would be the first step in terms of researching opportunities for publication? I know like Writer's Market has like that book they put out every year. Where do you begin? You finished your work and now you think it's ready to be published. Where do you research the opportunities? Where are those opportunities found?
Yeah, I think I saw something kind of recently that the New Yorker accepts like 0.16% of their unsolicited submissions, which is crazy. Yeah, I would say I go back to thinking about like where you want your who you think of as potential peer writers, and like who are the writers that you admire, and seeing where they've published before. Because all of your favorite writers, whether they've won the Pulitzer or whatever they've done, they've published in smaller magazines before that. So that will tell you a lot about. And if you feel aligned with them aesthetically, then yeah, you can sort of follow their path in that way. I think that's been the most useful for me, is like looking through those acknowledgement sections of books and following that way. That's done more for me than the lineups, or excuse me, the roundups of where to submit generally has. Oops. Anybody else?
Anyone else have any more questions? Okay.
Hey, hey.
This is a bit off topic, but how was NYU, and what are some things you liked about it and some things you didn't really like about it?
I loved it. I feel very lucky because an MFA environment, like, you could ask 5 people from the same class, especially like NYU is a slightly larger program. Like some of them would have like 4 people in a genre. NYU, my class, I think it was 20 poets and 20 fiction writers. And then the classes would be, there were like 10 of us per workshop and stuff, so it was still like very intimate, but you got a little bit more range there. So yeah, you could ask 5 people from the same program, and 2 of them might have had a really fabulous time, and then 2 of them might be more ambivalent, and then 1 may have like quit writing because it was just so rough. Like, it's so dependent on so many things. On how well you're being read, whether your work whether you feel understood by the people around you. And so, yeah, that's also what's tricky about it, is that there are no guarantees really. I think that if you're lucky to have even 1 or 2 people in your program, or like even one professor who really gets what you're doing, then that's great. Sometimes people come through and they don't feel like they really felt seen or like identified with anybody too strongly within a program, which can be brutal. It's like you're getting constant feedback that what you're doing doesn't make sense, and that's not necessarily true. What you're doing could be great, and these people are not your readers. So I think that would be my advice for anybody who goes into a program, is to just manage your expectations and know that it might not be perfect, but that there's still so many other places to build meaningful community, and there's still a lot that you can get out of a program, even if it's not a perfect experience. But yeah, I feel very lucky that mine, I had a really great thesis advisor. I have friends from the program who I still am like very close with, and we've been really supportive of one another as our books have come out, and yeah.
So I have 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is about the agents. If they don't find your work and solicit your work, how do you find agents?
Mm-hmm.
The other one is, when did you decide that it's a good, like, not you, but like in general, when would a writer decide that it's a good idea to publish a chapbook? Would it even be a good idea if the author hasn't established like a good publication history of at least most of the poems that would be in the chapbook?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be too early, or
Mm-hmm.
when would it be good?
Mm-hmm. Wait, sorry, repeat your first question. Because I started to think about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, for agents. Yeah, agenting, it works so differently across genres. Like if you're writing fiction, you have to query the agent so that the agent can then take that project out into the world. With poets, it's less traditional to even have an agent. I've met other poets who have like gotten their first books through agented submission, but that's not necessarily always the case. Like a lot of folks will do the contest route, like submitting to so-and-so press's prize, and you win $2,000, and then we'll publish your book through. But there are more and more places, literary agents, that are seeking to represent poets. So yeah, you can do specific research to see like what places like are looking for poets, and I don't think it hurts to query. My agent was really great because not only did she, when it was time to go out on submission, she did handle that. We were able to reach out to places that don't take manuscripts unless they're agented, which is how I landed with Grey Wolf. And she was also really helpful in helping me develop the manuscript. She was really like in the weeds with me and figuring out the edits, which was extremely helpful. So I would say if you're going the poetry route, like explore that, because it was immensely helpful to me. And if you're going like fiction or nonfic, you'll have to do it. And yeah, that's its own science. I think, Brian, you have a talk about agenting coming up? Yeah, okay. So when is that? That's
Tomorrow at 2:00.
okay, there you go.
We're nearing the end of our time, so if you have any questions, speak now or hold your peace until you can find him after his talk tonight. I'll go for another question. You talked about kind of going across the range of writing jobs that you found. What are those sorts of things that people might not expect you can do in writing?
Yeah, I mean, it's secretly so useful. I mean, not secretly, but I don't know. I feel like from day one of William and Mary, I was like fighting for my life. The STEM majors being like, "What are you gonna do in English degree?" And I feel like with the advent of AI and everything, it's kind of paradoxically that skill set has become more useful. If that like as it's become rarer for people to have that skill set, like there's so many places that like need people who are good, who can do communications or that kind of stuff. So let me think. Like I have a friend Leah. She works in tech, doing communications for them. I think she like manages some sort of newsletter or something. So I have a lot of friends who do stuff like that. Like copywriting is like very obvious traditional writing path. But I would say like I wouldn't necessarily have thought to seek out like tech places. I have another friend who was at Google and now is working for like a different startup, but it's also in like a comms capacity. So yeah, writing and editing and just like, yeah, being able to do that it's such a transferable skill. So I would work on that skill set, and if you can land an internship at a place that feels like in the comms or like writing sort of place or department that feels like, oh, I might want to be in this realm, that's an easy way to get in there. There's way more places than you would think that are looking for writers. There are people who know their way around a sentence and are not reliant on ChatGPT.
I actually have a question as well. So what work are you the most proud of? And also, what are some challenges you had to overcome as a writer?
Work I'm proudest of, I don't know, I guess I'm proudest of this book that's about to be out. I mean, it took so damn long. So, like, I didn't think it would, I had it, the chapbook that I had out, which is like a shorter collection, was out in 2022, a couple years out of the MFA, and so it took me a while to get together a full-length collection that felt cohesive and like, I don't know, putting together a poetry collection is such a weird, difficult process. I think putting together anything that's like an amalgamation of separate parts is very hard. I mean, all writing is hard, but like with a novel, you're like, I know that I am writing this thing, and it will take over your life and, you know, destroy you, but you know what you're writing. When I'm writing poems, I'm like, I don't really know. Like, it took me so long to realize how they all cohere. Like, I knew I was writing around certain subjects, but I had to just write and write and write and write. And eventually I looked at all this stuff and then was like, okay, this makes sense. And I imagine, I haven't written a short story collection, but I've surmised that it's kind of like that too. So I think that's a challenge, is like figuring out like, how do all of these things fit into a book format. The hardest, the greatest challenge of being a writer and to this day is just like surviving, you know, the perils of late capitalism while trying to you know, do what you love and make a living. But I'm still kicking somehow. I'm still not destitute yet.
That's very awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.